He's for every one of us. Stand for every one of us. He'll save with a mighty hand every man, every woman, every child with a mighty flash. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast, home base for the best in music and movie podcasting. Correct, Eric?
That is correct, sir. Yes.
That's what I heard. And if it's on the internet, it must be true.
Well, as long as we believe it, it is so.
It is so. Make it so.
Absolutely. Make it so.
Make it so. Mm-hmm. And we are making it so this episode with two special guests. Before we introduce them, though, if you're listening to us on Spotify or your favorite podcast provider, go ahead and follow us, first of all, so you get notifications when all the new episodes come out. And then also give us a rating if you would. That'd be great. Give us the, swipe to the top of the ratings and leave it there. And then, release your finger and let it stay at 5 stars. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and go ahead and leave some comments about what we're about to talk about. We absolutely engage with our community. We love to. Then there's also a Facebook group that hit a milestone in membership. So get in on that too. You can interact with us there. Like I said in previous podcasts, Eric, this is empire building. Mm-hmm. We are building the different pillars on which our empire will sit. Yeah,
the foundation has been laid. I think we're on level. What is it? Level 2, level 3?
I don't know. Whatever it is, I feel like Schwarzenegger at the end of Conan.
Is this going to be the Nakatomi Plaza at some point?
It could be Nakatomi. Yeah. We'll have it done by Christmas then.
Yeah. But anyway,
so without further ado, we've got some great guests with us. Mr. Roland DeRucci, haven't seen him in a while.
Yes.
Welcome back, sir. He's sporting the cap too. So
that's right. We love your choice in hats, sir.
He's trying to make amends.
Yeah, that's it. Make amends.
He's trying to get in there for it's been a while, but Roland, it's so great to have you back. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Roland is the founder and the owner of his empire, the Ready Speaker podcast. So that's a YouTube only channel. So we'll drop a link in the show notes to that. Roland does a lot of, shorter form content, but just as deep diving. I mean, he really goes into it with new movies, TV shows, series, all that great stuff. So we'll drop a link in the show notes. Check out Roland, give him a subscribe. If you're on YouTube right now, go check him out as well. So welcome, Roland. And of course, the guy that was worried about his lighting, was it right? Was it too dark? Am I too blue? Do I need color correction? I mean, he has his own production staff with him, but we are glad to have Mr. Nick Leshy back with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nick the Merciful.
Yes. Nick the Merciful.
Nick the Merciful is the founder of the City of Kick blog. So you can go ahead and check that out. There'll be a link in the show notes as well. So you can go check out Roland for the video stuff, and then check out Nick for the reading stuff, the literature. It's a lost art blogging, but Nick is keeping it alive. So,
and I always see a spike in visitation whenever you mention whenever these episodes go live and you plug it. So thank you.
That's great.
But here's the thing though. My bank account doesn't see a spike in visitation as a result of people visiting your webpage.
That is very true.
We need to have a conversation.
We do
off camera. Maybe Roland can help strong arm a little bit. This guy.
Figure this out.
I got things.
He's got things. He knows people. He
knows. Roland knows people who know people.
That's what it is. I know a guy who knows a guy.
Somebody, a friend of a cousin of a brother of a friend whose brother-in-law works with this guy that's a friend of his aunt, and it goes all the way down the line. So we've got our table set with our guests. The movie, if you haven't guessed what we're doing a movie, Flash Gordon from 1980. Oh, Lord. Boy. Oddly enough, we'll get into it, but there's a nice little reunion that the four of us are experiencing as a result of some of the people associated with this film. But let's get into the stats first before we do all that kind of stuff. This was released in December of 1980, directed by Mike Hodges, written by Lorenzo Semple Jr., who was kind of he wrote for like the Batman series in the 60s. You kind of see his name around a lot, but he actually, when I looked up his body of work, it really wasn't as much as I thought it was, but I just remember seeing his name a lot. Anyway, this had a $20 to $27 million budget, somewhere in there. is the range, and it made $64.5 million box office, considered not successful. This was not considered a winner when it came out, especially in the light of, Star Wars, and the big box office that these sci-fi films were generating. And this was kind of trying to swing it in that batter's box as some of those ones, but they just didn't have. I mean, you see a $20 to $27 million budget. Star Wars was made for $10 million, so you think, well, this is a lot more, but things had kind of ramped up by then as well, right, Roland, with kind of expenses and starting to be a little more freer with the money to get something back.
Yeah, and probably the rates went up a little bit too, because it almost feels like that this movie, even though it spent more, some of the effects actually seem like they were actually worse.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. I mean, that's one of the,
like the weird thing. I think people I can charge more now.
Yeah, you're not seeing necessarily the money on the screen for what it was. Again, if you're going to compare it with what George Lucas did for $10 million and say, well, this is $20 million or close to $30 million. Yeah, you could be like, well, I don't see it. I don't get it.
It wasn't exactly state of the art.
It wasn't, but there's an appeal to
absolutely
there's an appeal to it, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like De Laurentiis. He was very aware of the budget. He was very cautious about it. They had some grand ideas for it. We'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, he kept it at, and it was just, he just wanted it to be a certain thing. And I don't know if it was that for him or not, but again, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. And back. Dino De Laurentiis, the producer, he's had the Flash Gordon property since the 60s and was trying to always get something going. In the 70s, there was a filmmaker that approached Dino De Laurentiis and said, listen, I'd like to buy the rights to Flash Gordon so I can make a Flash Gordon film. And De Laurentiis said, no, not for sale. Sorry. Mm-hmm. That person was George Lucas, and he went on to make his own Flash Gordon movie, which was Star Wars. So his first choice was to acquire the Flash Gordon property. And that's how, back then, Flash Gordon was still kind of a thing. People knew about him. He was, in comics, and the name was still around because of the serials from the 40s. So he was kind of
I watched the serial all the time.
Yeah, with Buster Crabbe. So there was.
I watched it on PBS and Channel 9 and Channel 11 in New York City, wherever it played. I used to watch it all the time.
Yeah, so there was still some name recognition for this property. And then in the 70s, or late 60s, De Laurentiis approached Federico Fellini to potentially direct. Interesting choice. Nicholas Roeg, another interesting choice, a very artsy director. And then the head scratcher, Sergio Leone, was approached. Roland's just looking like, what? Did you say Sergio Leone? Yeah. Wow. Sergio Leone was approached, and he actually turned it down because he didn't feel that the script was Flash Gordon enough. It wasn't enough. It wasn't faithful enough to the comic. He felt like, like it's kind of veering off. And then eventually Mike Hodges, who's kind of, he was a workman-like director in the 70s. He kind of, had some decent output, not known for any gigantic, huge films, but a capable enough director. So he
did hire Nick Roeg to do it. And Nick Roeg was developing it with a screenwriter named Mike Allen, who had helped him on Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie, he kind of polished that screenplay. And what they developed was this ridiculously serious, theological, albeit sexual, head-scratching, thing about God, and there was this like really religious tone to it, and was very serious. And De Laurentiis was like, no, there's not enough jokes in this thing. So he would, Nick Roeg left. The screenwriter stayed on for a bit. And then they got Mike Hodges, and Mike Hodges, he was introduced to him, and he's like, I'd like you to continue to work on this, but I'm bringing in another screenwriter, which is Lorenzo Semple. And he's like, I'm not working with that guy because he is the king of camp. He's Batman, and this is going to be, just a cartoon. And this is not the movie that Nick Roeg and I were making. And, so they kind of fell out, and they were kind of bitter about it because it just wasn't their vision. But I think in the long run, I think even De Laurentiis said it was too campy. You know, so there wasn't that. I think he kind of wanted more of a Star Wars feel, like an in between kind of thing, where it, you know, it had the right gravitas in parts, but then jokes in another part, you know, like just funny enough but serious enough, and just that right balance. But it didn't quite work out that way. It was just very,
you know, but before we get to the cast, then let me bounce it over to Nick then, because Eric mentioned a couple of things. Not Star Wars enough and campy, right? And those are two common terms that are usually thrown around with this. Nick, do you agree with that?
I do. Obviously, if George Lucas had gotten the property, it wouldn't, just judging by what Star Wars turned out to be, it wouldn't have been campy. There might have been some camp elements, or but obviously, if you hire somebody who wrote, for the Batman TV series of the 60s, you get that camp. And I get the sense of something like Barbarella from the 1960s.
Oh, yeah.
Where that became a very campy kind of... But I think you can't go for camp. I think camp is something where it's like, you can go for just comedy and serious and just play it that way. And I think some of these characters, Max von Sydow, a lot of these characters played it as dedicated and emotional as possible. They didn't just do it for laughs, but obviously they're reading the script and they know this is campy, so I don't know if this would have worked better if they did it more seriously or not, but I think that was one of its problems, the fact that it was so, after Star Wars, I think anything looks cheap and cheesy, so you look at the shows on TV. That's a good comparison. Something like Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers, those had campy feel to it, but they went all in with the special effects and the production values, and they took it a little bit more seriously. So you can still have that camp element. You look at Buck Rogers, there's a lot of campy elements, Tiger Man and all this stuff. Same thing with Battlestar Galactica, but it didn't have this kind of cheap feel to it, And when we look at Masters of the Universe, that kind of had a campy feel to it too. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer was, but it certainly didn't hit the mark. They wanted to make this a trilogy, and it was kind of like, I mean, it hit the mark in the sense that it's fun to watch, but in terms of it being a success where it's, led to like a franchise, Flash Gordon has not, Flash Gordon has not been the big moneymaker that it should be.
Absolutely. Now I feel that because it's not like Star Wars, I think that works in its favor. Because had it been somewhat, and there are some elements of Star Wars in there, how could you not? But I think because they went, and I don't want to use the word camp. When I watched it today, and I hadn't watched it in a while, but it's one of my favorite films. When I watched it today, I was getting more of a feeling that this feels like I'm watching a comic book version of a movie. Not a comic book, not Iron Man, not MCU, but like a comic book from the 40s. It had the kind of the corny dialogue of, as soon as my feet touch the ground, I'll kiss it moves pretty quick, but it's campy just doesn't work because there are great effects in it. There is an Art Deco style that they were going for. They didn't do that because it was cheap. They were nodding, right, Roland? They were nodding towards the original comic, like with the they were also nodding
to the original series, I think, and that's what I felt. That almost 2-dimensional, faux 3-dimensional series, with a crab, and that's what connected with me with it the most. And I remember seeing this in the theater. So
me too. Yeah,
I saw it in the theater because Queen sang the soundtrack. That's literally why we went. We're not realizing there's a one-line soundtrack, but but that's where the money went. Obviously, 17 million went to that. But it to me when I was watching it, and it doesn't succeed in a lot of ways. It succeeds in some. I think they probably needed a better script doctor and to be able to have eyes outside of the circle. And those jokes can be funny, and they're all honestly. Most of them, almost everybody in there is a really good actor. Because they have a history, they have a track record. These aren't unknowns.
I think that's what saved it more or less.
Right, that's what brought it even to the level it needed to be. Because no one else could really deliver those lines without having that experience.
Yeah, we brought this up with Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, same thing.
Angela. But we had more than one person in this film that gave that all.
Right.
Like, Timothy Dalton, Max von Sydow. I mean, they really put their all into these roles.
I agree.
Yeah.
And gave it. exactly what it needed. Yeah.
I think if they could have tweaked the jokes for timing, and I think that's probably the director's fault. And that's sort of where I put this, where it fails for me. I think the director didn't really understand timing that well for humor.
Yeah.
And to have those beats come in a good spot, and sort of like, the physicality. He didn't really know. I again, this is me, just conjecture. I don't know. I wasn't but it just feels like he didn't know really how to tell people how to be the character. He didn't give them enough to do the homework. Mm-hmm. And that's, and there are budget constraints, even though with all the money. I mean, the audio is pretty horrible. Some of the some of the effects just weren't good. I was laughing at my son that all the laser shots, there's no depth. No matter where the laser is, it's the same size.
Yeah.
so they could have shot something.
Yeah. And it's the same.
It's still that width.
You're right.
It's still that width.
There's no horizon line. It doesn't go off into the horizon.
There's no scale. Like the laser bolts
from all off. So it was
the cannons on a ship are the same size as the laser bolts from the handheld stuff that we use.
Right. So I was like, this makes no sense. I go, this is kind of. I mean, it stuck with me, and I noted it now, and I'm sure I didn't note it when I watched it first.
I think Dean makes a really good point when he says that when you look at it, and I know Alex Ross said this, famous comic book artist, brilliant. His stuff is. He said as much the same thing. He's like, I don't see this as a campy movie. I see this as a comic book. You can almost see like the pacing of the film lends itself to the panels of a comic book, where they don't go into a lot of heavy exposition and a lot of things just happen matter of factly, and it's boom, 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 and it's like, and it just takes you right to the end, but you have a story. And there it is. And there, so I when I first saw it in the theater, I thought it, because the bar was set so high with Star Wars, but we got Empire Strikes Back that year. This was a darker film in tone from the first one, where, and it's like, we're starting to mature a little bit here. Yeah. But Flash Gordon comes along, but that, this was a different kind of maturity. And I think where I'm going with this.
A lot of sexual, a lot of sexual,
overtly sexual. Yeah, we're not talking. I mean, this is every scene, everything about this movie.
Yeah. Or just
to the
everybody
is completely
a couple of my lines, which is weird. Usually things don't cross the line for me.
Yeah,
a couple of them, I was like, okay, I don't know if I would say that.
But as a 13-year-old, when you're watching this as coming off of Star Wars, and you're watching this as a 13-year-old kid. Now we're heading into that kind of territory where in the 80s where these movies started, like sci-fi fantasy became something a little bit more than just, cute little creatures and, like that kind of thing. Now we're dealing with like rated R, more adult themes,
adult themes,
heavy metal, like the following year, all that kind of stuff. That's when I got into that kind of, I think Flash Gordon might have been that gateway into that form of storytelling in that way. Like it's just like, whoa, this is kind of
certainly hot, has a European feel to a European feel to it, and no small part because a lot of this was, a lot of Italian actresses. This actually did better in Italy than it did because of the Italian actresses. Let's get into the cast. While we're there, let's kind of go through that because it is important. You got Sam J. Jones as Flash Gordon. Should have been a career-making thing, but he was just so difficult. He became such a problem, that he didn't come back for the ADR, and someone else, what's his name, Peter Marinker, did like most of his overdubs. It's mostly not Sam J. Jones's voice. Anyway, Melody Anderson as Dale Arden, Max von Sydow as Ming the Merciless. Again, he's the Frank Langella is the heir apparent. His Skeletor is the heir apparent to this performance as Ming because if this guy is winking and nodding at the camera, it ain't gonna work. But he takes Ming very seriously, and as a result, the movie rests on his shoulders. Topol as Hans Zarkov. Topol is mostly known from Fiddler on the Roof. But he's great. He's another one. He's
fantastic.
Beginning to end. Yep.
He was just really great. Ornella Muti as Princess Aura.
Fantastic.
A very young Timothy Dalton. This was before we really knew Dalton. And his tagline was, lying bitch.
Yeah.
It's great. Like, you know, lying bitch. It's like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, this guy, you know, like,
yeah,
because he knows that she's just trampy. He knows that Aura's trampy. Like, lying bitch. The great Brian Blessed as Prince Voltan.
Oh,
again, God. Another guy that he kind of balances out Max von Sydow. I think Max von Sydow is needed to really bring it and be serious, a menacing villain, and Brian Blessed is just having so much fun with his character. Much fun. Like he's just laughing at like the character. Voltan is like that, but it's a big, broad body character, and
he delivers that character.
Yeah, and it's fun when he's on screen. He's fun because he's
every single moment he's on screen. It's fantastic. Yeah. Here's a guy who's with giant wings, underwear, running around
at a club.
And he's loving it. And it's not like just hamming up in every scene, like
no, it's not
he's playing it almost seriously, but to the hilt. Like this is the character.
The character is a big character. Yeah.
I'll even say this character influenced other characters. Any big, broad-chested, like British people who physically fit that, I would say they take the influence from this character.
Yeah.
After this. I've seen tons of characters like this in the 90s and the 2000s that literally are just this character. And I was as watching, I was like, "Oh my God, I've seen so many people who
and
really
it's fun.
laugh
it's
like that."
Fun to watch him. It's just
great.
fun to like.
He really knows how to get you going. I mean,
and of course the famous line, "Gordon's alive."
Yeah, that like, smile, that big ass grin on his face, and that big mouth that he has is just both in voice and in size. It's just very imposing, but just fun. He's just so great.
And he coined the Highlander term. He said, "Who wants to live forever?"
Yeah,
from this movie came right to Highlander, and dive.
I love that.
Peter Weingart is General Clytus. Oh my God, I love Clytus.
Clytus is great. Yeah,
he's so cool. He's so smarmy, but just they tried to do a Vader thing, and I think they did it good because he's behind this mask, but he's kind of he's Grand Moff Tarkin-ish, like, right? Because he's kind of like the side advisor, but he's really
I could see a lot of Skeletor in him, and more in him than I think Ming. Because of the hood, the robes, and I think the mask really worked really well when he talks. The jaw moves, and it moves as he's speaking, and it worked. That was probably one of the best cheap effects in the film, like that as a practical effect, whatever.
I agree, it's the best costume in the film.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, fantastic. So
and he's always like lurking around. He's sadistic,
he's in behind every corner. He's right there, and he's lusting after Aura.
After Aura, yep.
Yeah, there's that whole bit with the handkerchief, and apparently, I guess that might have been a deleted scene before the execution where she drops. That's her handkerchief. That's why he's always like sniffing it, and it's just like those kinds of things are just like, this is a dirty movie. We're dealing with some that adults are actually winking at, but kids aren't going to get. It's like right over their heads, but it's sort of like in between, and that was one of the critiques of the film, I think, was by the original screenwriter about it. He goes, "That's what I don't like about this movie is that it's not meant to be winked to." We, kids look up the comic books, because of the morality, and they learn from reading comic books. They actually learn something. Here, it's just kids aren't really getting the jokes because they're too adult. The adults are just kind of like, whoa, okay, whatever. But so there's no like middle ground there. At least he thought, where anybody's really getting anything out of this film. But I don't know about that. I don't know. I disagree. I think there's enough of that solid hero story there. I mean, it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
let me finish up finishing up the cast. Mariangela Malato as General Kala, who's like the female version of Clytus, another kind of, delights in torture and dispensing pain. And, she's got that. You know what? I forgot about that. I watched the trailer before I watched the movie. I'm like, when did she shoot flames out of a ring? But she did. Like, there's this scene where she shot the flames out of her ring. That was kind of cool. And then she got blown away. Richard O'Brien as Fico. He's one of the tree men with Timothy Dalton. And then we'll do one more. George Harris as Prince Thun.
Yeah.
And we know Prince Thun from a movie a couple of years later. He would be Captain Katanga from Raiders of the Lost Ark. He would be the pirate, the captain that spirits Indy and Marion away, and they board him and they take,
we can't deny the great William Hootkins either.
And William Hootkins, yes.
William Hootkins as Munson. Was it Munson or Bunsen? I forget.
Munson.
Again, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, Batman. He was the detective. Eckhart. So I mean, this guy's been around. He's done some stuff. So
you can't blame the cast for the box office underperformance, right? I mean, they great character actors, and they're good.
Yeah, and I like I said, I think that's what for watching it now, it stood up for me because of the performance. Much like in the I'm going to parrot a lot of the He-Man episode because that movie stood up for me at the time. I was like, but then watching it, you appreciate the performances and what they put into it.
Yeah.
And looking at it now, like I said, it's kind of got the, it's got the comic book sensibilities, and then you add Queen into the mix, right? And which was an interesting thing because at the time, anything that was a Star Wars knockoff had this big score. Like they tried to have a Star Wars sounding score, like something majestic. Instead, that's what brought another flavor to this, Roland, right? Was having a rock band do the most of the heavy lifting for it.
There was a lot of talk about that. I remember that just vividly as a kid, and I was explaining even to my sons. I was like, no, the big thing about this movie was Queen was the soundtrack, and that at those years they were a hot band. There's a lot of stuff about them. They were doing stuff every year. Everybody loved watching them. They're a great live band. They're a great character, and they sort of fit the image of this type of film where Queen was going. With their music and essentially a space opera with them singing rock operas. I mean, that's what you were waiting for. For me, again, it felt like a little bit of a letdown.
They took it. They tried to do some scoring instead of everything was
what you expect. But that's my fault. Like my prejudice of what I expected.
Well, I like the Brian May stuff when the Hawkmen are attacking Ajax, the rocket, and there's that rock. Brian May's just really kind of wailing.
There is stuff there. There is stuff there. So
there's some shades of there's some shades of Queen, but then some of it's a little ethereal and a little more artsy.
They were going somewhere else.
I kind of like that though. I like the synth heavy, the tones. Like I love that.
No, it holds up.
I love one of my favorite bits is when they first got shot out into space, and you hear that twang.
Yeah, the guitar,
and then it has that weird sort of almost Vangelis type, like keyboards coming in, and it's like, and then the drums kick in, and they're entering the vortex. I love that piece. That's a beautiful piece, and that's what kind of helps sell it for me. The orchestral score parts to me were the cheesy parts. There was a Howard Blake, I believe his name is. He did some little scoring there. And it's those moments where I felt that those were the cheesy moments.
Out a little bit.
Yeah,
because the rock elements, the more sort of like modern sound elements, is what lent the tone and the look of the film. And I felt it
made it more unique.
Yeah,
and this movie is right after all the rock movies, the rock opera movies are out there, like The Who, we had Quadrophenia. See, I had all these moments, so I totally got like where they were going.
Yeah, Pink Floyd, The Wall had come out. Queen had this movie came out in December of 1980. In June or earlier in 1980, Queen put out their album The Game, which had Another One Bites the Dust on, A Crazy Little Thing Called Love. So this kind of was a perfect symbiotic thing for them to do of they had really broken through in America in a big way. And now they're doing the score to a film. And this is where I was saying earlier that this ties in is the four of us had done Highlander, which is the second film that Queen had done most of the music for. So that was a little serendipitous and that's why I thought all four of us it would be nice for us to do this one too, because we had done Highlander and Queen had done that one as well.
But to Roland's point, that one was more song heavy. There's a lot more actual songs in that film, which was
a totally different tone and vibe, and you could tell Queen even knew that going into it. They were going for something different.
So I'm gonna verify for you, or you're gonna verify for me, my Flash Gordon street cred, how much of a fan I am. Is I actually have the original press kit.
Wow!
From Flash Gordon.
Look at that.
How'd you get that?
Which it's got all the stills. It's got all the promo stills. It's got all the press.
Little fact. Little trivia.
It's got all the press materials.
Sam J. Jones dyed his hair blonde in the movie, but he's a brunette. And Melody Anderson's a brunette, but dyed it. She's a blonde, but she dyed her hair.
Dyed her hair brunette. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember reading that as a kid. Yeah, they switched their hair color.
Actual press. I got this like Eric. I got this at like one of the conventions we used to go to. Remember, like the Trek conventions? Yes. That was like the mid '80s.
That's amazing.
I bought it back then, so I've had this for probably over 30 years, at least. 30 years.
I will say the cover art for the film is probably one of my favorite pieces of cover art for a film.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, iconic. Like
like
I got an iconic logo to it.
Yeah,
they did get a lot of these things right. They were creating like the Flash wore a shirt with his, like his own. He was like the first influencer. He like had his own his name on his shirt walking around.
Yeah, because he was a celebrity football player, right? The character, and
he played for the Jets. So I don't know what that
I love that line. I love that
for
line.
what it's worth. For what it's worth.
I love it.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the movie now. I mean, we haven't spent too much time on it, and the thing I noticed again, like I think Eric said it, or the movie just starts, and that's one of the things with low budget or campy movies. If it takes a while for things to get ramped up, and they spend too much time introducing characters, then you start to feel it. You start to get dragged down. This movie just starts. It's kind of like boom, Ming is assaulting Earth. Hans Zarkov was already predicting this, so he had already built a rocket because he was disavowed by NASA. Yeah. For whatever that means.
That was some rocket. That was some.
So we didn't need all this explanation. Yeah, another one.
Yeah. Yep. It's like all the rockets in this thing were various shapes.
Shower massager from the 80s.
That was the one. That was the one loophole that I was just like, he needed somebody to stand on the little knob or something.
Why couldn't he do that?
But then that's when you realize you don't need.
I need someone to sit on this red button to keep your foot on this red button.
Then he says that he goes to, Munson is like twice the size of Dale Arden. And he's like, but you're the lighter one, so I'm keeping you here so you could step on the red button. But Munson was like this big, hefty guy. Like, so what do you really, I didn't understand that, but he goes, you could go tell the world what Hans Zarkov has done. He's like, I love that. That beefy, that handy stuff going on. It was so great, Like
pointing. He's like pointing. It's like it's an invasion.
Good morning. I say that to my son every morning. I pick him up for work, because he loves this film too. I introduced him to it. And
I have a telephone. It's right this way. Come right in here.
Yeah,
it's like this giant rocket. But again, that's what that's what makes this film endearing.
Yes.
Is that that it is, if you take it as a comic book film, and it's not, they were trying to ride with Star Wars and Star Trek the motion picture, but it's not that. And that's not a bad thing. I like that this is unique in its art direction. It's got the liquid skies and the liquid clouds.
Yeah, beautiful.
Star Wars didn't have that. Star Trek didn't have that, and they did bring something different. They just didn't try and parrot what was going on before with the art direction. Yeah, with the phallic, these phallic spaceships and like Eric said, the overt sexuality. Star Wars wasn't doing that. Star Trek wasn't doing that. So this brought a little bit of that raciness in there. With Aura, who's like the doctor's like, Aura, I can't get over you, and we're gonna meet you. And she's like, next month we'll meet. Whatever, just get away.
Yeah, it's like when Ming's ring is an orgasm maker. I mean, that's pretty much what they have.
Oh, that was and come on, that you can't. Yeah. That was a great shot with the hand. That whole business with the hand and the force perspective.
Yeah,
come on,
great shot.
Yeah, that was
I think this movie really was a product of its time, and people trying to look forward rather than backwards and nostalgia. And if you go with Star Wars and those types of films, there is a sense of nostalgia there. They're looking at pirates and the garb and the design and the fabrics. And this was looking really in the future. And at that point, society was like, hey, in the future, sex is not going to be stigmatized.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. Like you're saying, it really did something different than like leaning into the nostalgia. And
this entire
the costumes were really interesting.
This entire world was based on that. I mean, look at the end where the ships are flying over the wedding, right? I just kind of noticed that today, actually. I mean, I know that it was there, but I was reminded of it where they're playing. I want everybody to basically just have a big orgy.
Yeah.
or you're going to die.
Or
If you're under pain of death, like there's like you pleasure yourselves or you're going to die. You know, that's the world they're living in, and it's like, wow, you know, like this guy's Caligula for God.
Yeah.
You know, even to go as far as I think maybe the first like interspace, we're going to go there, but we're going to get away from the tawdry stuff, I promise. But I have to mention that the first probably interstellar Viagra was the power, like Ming's power potion, right? Yeah. It's the slave girl's like, Ming always takes a power potion before he makes love. And, you know, like I was like,
what? It was very Hugh Hefner.
Dude, he starts taking off his belt. Well, I mean, it's like, you're right. This is like very risque. And I would say Aura is kind of, she's very empowered. Like she kind of like just goes. I mean, she's like the Captain Kirk of you know, in Flash Gordon. Like he's got somebody in every port, right? But this does go into like some dark places, like when they start torturing her, and then you find you see Ming is looking and watching from behind the scene and like condoning it, like, you know, this is his daughter, right? So some dark, campy stuff, but also some dark, serious stuff too.
Your imagination is taking you somewhere. What the hell are boar worms?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can only imagine what those things are actually doing to her, but you know, and she's, you know, and then and
you see how it changes her too. Like the next time you see her, she's not this kind of like she's been, whatever that did to her, it did it, you know.
There's a sense of you know, well, I mean, there it is. I mean, it's traumatic for her.
Yeah.
Like this is they've taken it too far at this point, right? It's like, you know, so there's a lot of that. The women, you know, coming out and just being like, oh, my heart has changed. I'm, you know, I might be monogamous at this point, you know, with Baron. She's like, I want to marry. She's like, we'll see. Or,
let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens or whatever. And,
very fickle.
You know,
women are very fickle.
But even like some of the things that come out of their mouths, like I forgot about that line with Baron. Like he's like, I didn't peg you for getting into, you know, necrophilia. And like,
yes.
Whoa, you know, like where did that come from? And the whole bit with the, you know, the ritual, and it's like, and she's like,
oh, I love watching the ritual. Oh my God,
I love watching that. I'm like,
oh my perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like,
this is like, you know,
there's a lot. Yeah. It's
things that go over little kids' heads.
I know you're like, we got to go away from this, but that is like a big part of this film.
Yeah, it is.
The titillation of it and the storytelling.
Yeah, it definitely has. Like I said, it's got that. It's not. It doesn't feel like an American-made comic book movie for a younger audience. This is something you would see in a European, a little more artsy, right? With those innuendos, and some of them aren't.
And the innuendos aren't a wink; they're there.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
not a wink. It's not.
Some of them you have to catch, but some of them are you know.
No, I'm saying they're
like when Flash is communicating with Dale, he's like, "Oh my God, this woman, she's turning me on." She's like, "What? Yes, say that again." He's like, "Oh, nothing."
Yeah.
Dale reacts to the ring better than even Ming's daughter.
Yeah.
So, what? When he goes, have you ever seen this before? When Dale reacts to the ring.
Yeah.
She goes, she even rivals your daughter.
Titus goes, even more than your daughter.
Well, that was part. I think
that was the first thing where you're like, oh, okay.
That comes from the original script, actually, because, you know, in the script, Ming is very taken with Dale, and, you know, the line where he's talking to Flash in the Hawkman City when they all abandon it, and he says to Flash, and he goes, you know, I'll offer you a kingdom, you know, and he's like, no, I'd rather die. He's like, oh, so you prefer death? And she goes, what's to become of Dale? Well, we will marry her, we will procreate with her. And we will send our progeny to Earth to rule the Earth.
Back down Earth. Yep.
But that comes from that's what the original script was based on. This whole like idea of Flash and Dale being Adam and Eve essentially, and Ming being God. You know, like sort of like playing with them and, you know, messing. You know, yeah. So it was like this really philosophical thing, and it just got real too heavy-handed, too cerebral.
Yeah.
So that it,
definitely one hand
didn't play. But a lot of that existed, a lot of that survived in the script, but it wasn't, you know, you don't catch it because the pacing and everything is just, you know, sometimes if you're not paying attention, these things are being said, but you're kind of like, you're watching, you know, what's going on and, you know, everything else. So
because the movie's moving, the movie's literally moving from like Arborea, from Mongo, like that. They talk about Phrygia, but they never go there. Like there's all these different worlds that they reference and then some that they visit, which makes for a really great event. Like that's the thing at heart with this is stranger in a strange land. So once Flash is once they're deposited on Mongo, it's kind of like, what do we do? How do we fit in? And meeting the tree people and seeing that scene is really cool though, with Timothy Dalton. Like Timothy Dalton in his Shakespearean mode, like stop, like really, like he thought he was in like Lear or something. Like he was he was in that mode. But again, that's another fact. It's another.
He took it to heart. He gave it his all. There's no doubt.
It's another great counter. It's another great counterpoint to the different acting styles of everybody that was there. But the scene on Arborea when Flash, when Baron, Aura's like, oh, don't kill him, and Baron's like, I won't. But if he's killed trying to escape, I can't help that. So they set up Flash, and there's the scene with the stump where you have to put your hand in, and this thing bites you, and if you get bitten, you're gonna die. A little bit of nice tension there where they're kind of, showing their manhood, and so there's a lot of adventure points, and then from there they go to the Hawkman kind of abode or their headquarters or whatever. And then there's the great fight scene on that disc with those,
which is
I don't
great.
know how those guys. I gotta say, I don't know how they choreographed that, because I'm watching it and I'm watching Timothy Dalton fall, and then there's spikes that are coming up, or he's falling near
rubber, and because that looked.
They didn't look it. Yeah. I mean, they're like falling down, and spikes are coming up and down. I'm like, gee, so there's some stuff there. There's a lot of rollicking fun too, besides the innuendo and all that kind of stuff. I don't want people to think that that's all.
Well, there's stakes.
It's an
aspect.
There's
actual stakes involved here. There's those moments of tension, of moments of So it definitely had that,
because he's got a time limit, because Earth is going to be destroyed in 11 days, right? So that was the whole thing.
There's definitely. I think that the part that makes it silly for me is just the football player and the football stuff in the beginning. I think everything else after that, I kind of forgive, and I'm engaged.
Yeah.
Except for the football players, where he's throwing the eggs around and knocking them out.
And that's like he's playing some kind of game.
That's the campy moment. Everything else
is a very campy moment, because if you notice the alien, or the Mongo, they come out and they're wearing.
Oh, their helmets, they got pads.
Yeah, they kind of look like they got pads.
They got sneakers on, they got pads, it's just right in that moment.
It's funny.
It just happens to be, but
that's the campy moment for me. I think it's, you can call it campy, but I don't know if it's campy throughout the whole film. I think it does mature in its own way to tell its story by the end. And there's, like I said, there's great costume design. I always critique audio, but I like to acknowledge things too. But the costumes are great.
Yeah,
in that Dalton's costume is really an intricate costume. I mean, it's a thing. It looks great on the screen.
Yeah. You know what, Roland?
Very intricate.
They probably had to shoehorn some football reference. That scene is kind of unnecessary the way it was, but because they dropped the whole football thing after that. It never comes into play where he's got to maybe he's got to throw something in a hole so it'll
Hail
blow
Mary
up,
or something.
Like
he's got to throw a bomb.
And I was like, he's a quarterback. That's it.
And you could tell he's on the. And
they got to show it now.
You could tell why he's on the Jets with that performance. But it's kind of interesting that they kind of shoehorned it in, and then they kind of dropped it. So could it have been done without it? Absolutely. Was it campy? Yeah, because he's rolling over and knocking everybody.
Right. And Gail's going doing her cheerleading on the side.
Flash, go. And for me, that kind of, again, it adds just to that.
I think it makes it fun.
The wink and the nod. That's the wink and the nod to the audience.
I think that what saves the scene is the music. Is that music? And it's when he grabs it, he's like, and then the song, the music kicks in, and that's, to me, it's an exciting moment, especially when you listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Because they had some of the dialogue from the movie. I remember that being one of the first vinyl, albums I ever had. I ran right out and got that soundtrack after seeing the movie, because I loved, some of the stuff. And so I was always turning up the volume on that one, the football fight is what it's called. But that I don't know. Yeah, but you're right. It is probably might be the campiest moment in the film.
That's why I think people focus on the camp. I think they focus on that, and then they forget about the rest of the good stuff. That's my point with it. If you're going to say campy, I would say that's the only part that really sticks out.
And is that the scene too where Prince Vultan is like kind of standing on the side, doesn't want to get involved, but every time he's like hitting him on the head, kicking him.
It's like
it reminded me. That's what I was gonna write. That's exactly what I was gonna say. It has that campiness from like the Batman series, where you know it's a fight action packed, but it's meant for humor. You know. So
you half expect to see like the pows and the bams.
Exactly. I was like still cracking up. I was still cracking. Yeah, I was laughing. It still makes me crack up every time. But yeah, it's
fun. Yeah, it's in good fun.
Yeah. And that's a good way to introduce it. It's a serious. Like I mean, you look at the story. It's the world's ending. It's weird. They're being invaded. So it's a serious moment. They're getting that comedy right out of the way in the beginning, and then they're going to tell you a story. I'm like, okay, it's engaging. And definitely for the market they were going for. I mean,
because right after that, they execute him.
Yeah, right.
Right after that, they execute him. They kill Flash.
There is no. We'll think about it. Daddy, I want to keep him. Okay, no.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Black Speedo, get in the chair.
He's like really warrior.
That thing was kind of cool though. Actually, when they had him like strung up and he had that helmet on with the spikes. I mean, that's kind of cool. Like. Those are like cool visuals. Like
the production design is outrageous.
He can't see. He can't see anything. He has this big metal thing on with spikes, so you can't really move and do. I'm like, there is some like they didn't cheap out like in that aspect.
No,
did they have they didn't have the top of the line technology, which is what makes the difference visually. But the ideas were there and the designs were there. It's just, like having George Lucas invented ILM for his film. So that was something new of having like these experts and these pros that just do this. So, I can give them a pass for that because the design, the Hawkman designs, they're not real feathers. They're almost like bronze or, metal, but it's like, it's okay. It doesn't need to be like flapping. But
it's
wings,
also, to me, it's also honoring the movies of the past too. It's like, it's honoring those cheap serials. I mean, it looks exactly the same. It's just it's much more colorful. It's now in these bright red and I mean, it's brilliant colors in this movie. It's striking, very striking film. And also Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Let's face it. I mean, the pacing of the story, the way the story is structured, it reminds me of Wizard of Oz. You meet the characters along the way, and there's not a lot of time spent on what we should do, and this, thinking. It just everything is just done like matter of factly. And I get, and even there's that Wizard of Oz reference where she's like, it doesn't turn over, it doesn't, the sand's going up, and I mean that is a direct nod, and I think it's a great moment because it does remind you of that film.
Yeah,
just in the way it's told. So
no, great point. Great point. Yeah. And the assault of the Ajax is one of my favorite scenes too, because they send out this ship with a long pointy tip on it, and there's the scene of it coming through the clouds. First of all, you see is the tip of this thing. It's like a spear. And then you slowly see this ship just like come through like these liquid clouds. Again, the visual stuff is there. You got like Roland said, I think you gotta have to almost kind of look for it, and not judge scenes that come later in the film. Don't judge them by scenes that happened earlier in the film. I think that's a good role. I think you make a good point. Is the film kind of matures as it goes along, and once they find their pacing with, okay, this is an adventure. Like Eric said, we're going from this one to this one. We're trying to get allies and trying to group people up, and each one is a struggle. He's got to fight Baron, and Vultan is ambivalent just because he doesn't want to do it. He's not ready to do it. And sometimes it's kind of that relationship or ally building, and then everybody kind of rallies around Flash. All of a sudden they see that someone's willing to stand up. He uses the word team up a lot, and Aura's like, team up? What does that mean? He's like, why don't we team? Let's team up. And she's like, what does team up mean?
Yeah. Well, I love the beginning too. Like even Zarkov, he sets this is what the movie's about is Flash trying to rally everybody together. That's the whole motivation. And Zarkov sets that up in the beginning by saying, he's like, look at the poor wretches. They're waiting for somebody to lead them in revolt. Yeah. You talk about like really getting into it. There it is. that takes you right into the moment of what this movie's about.
Yeah, because he also says, because Zarkov also says, I hope these people don't look happy. And Zarkov says that can work to our advantage, because if you got people that are just, if there's dissent, you'll be able to find like the underground allies, these people that are kind of,
so just
waiting and wanting to do something.
Just with a few lines of dialogue, you really get that, that sort of, economy there. Like it's there's not a lot to play with there, but it works. It just kind of sets the movie up, and it works.
I think so. I think it. Yeah. What do you think, Nick? I mean, I think it does. I think it's kind of this can stand. Now it's a cult classic.
Yeah.
When I saw it in the theater, Eric saw it, Roland saw it in the theater. It wasn't a cult classic. It was trying to be, it was trying to run in the new sci-fi resurgence. So when I saw it, like Eric said, it didn't compare to Star Wars at the time. It's like, and nothing could. The bar was incredibly high. It's an unattainable bar at the time.
Right.
When I look at it now, though, I look at it as a very important part of like that whole era of sci-fi, because they tried to capitalize on Star Wars, but by not copying it, or by going to the original source material that Star Wars came from, and kind of honoring it somewhat faithfully. They didn't,
I mean, it starts off with the little panels, the comic book panels, just like Superman the movie did, right? But Superman the movie then had a more kind of a realistic, it fit in with the Star Wars era special effects and, Star Trek and all that came before it. So, but I think if you look at the Buster Crabbe serials, they had low budgets and things like that, but they played it straight, and that's really what inspired Lucas, I think. This had that sense, like you said, from the beginning, to kind of play it for camp. I know we don't want to keep saying that word, but maybe to what Roland said, I think maybe if this movie does have a weakness, it's probably the direction. I think the director could have done some of these scenes in a more engaging way without losing that visualness. You mentioned the scene where they're putting their hands into that log, and that could have been very Hitchcockian, right? Like in terms of building up the suspense, and it still had suspense and tension. But I don't think, I think in the hands of a better director, a lot of these scenes would have played better. And maybe that's what it was, that maybe was its ultimate downfall. But still fun, still engaging, the color, all that stuff that you talk about, the design, the script, the performances, all of it, works, so it should not have been maybe I think the fact that you compare it to something like Star Wars, that maybe is what hindered it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
I think a better comparison, one second, Roland. I think a better comparison, or had this come out after Raiders of the Lost Ark, and had they had a little bit of a blueprint of how to handle like this, the hero, and have that snark and that cynicism, but have those funny beats, right? Because Raiders has those kind of humorous beats in them, and the character is able to kind of carry it, and Sam J. Jones, he's probably the weakest link in this, but had they had like Raiders first as something they can kind of look at as a new way of screenwriting also, I think that might have helped to Nick's point of land, like the beats are there. They're just not, they're landing either a little step too early or a step too late. They're not kind of hitting the right way.
That's a good way to say it.
Over to you, Roland.
I think a better comparison might be Temple of Doom, because Temple of Doom was a little bit more of the sort of cliffhanging. It had a little bit more of that camp factor, a little, and the humor was a little more over the top, but they reined it in. When things got serious, it got serious, and it got dark, and it was just, for a lot of the movie, it is that. So I think, that could have lent. They could have done that a little bit more with this film as well. But again, it's this but it opened the door for me. It just opened the door for all of these other films to be made. Star Wars might have been the influence. So this can be done now. This genre is now
viable.
Here. It's here. It's now. It's, so then you got Conan the Barbarian, you got, The Last Starfighter, you got, all these other films that are not Spielberg or Lucas, because they're like top tier, A-list, people at this point. But you got a lot of these type of directors like Mike Hodges that come in and they make this stuff. And this stuff that they want to make, does it hold up? Does it? I don't know. I just think it's a very charming time. The early 80s is some of my very favorite. I could probably talk about this for hours. You know, this period of filmmaking, those late 70s, early 80s films. I just love so much. I just love that era. Yeah. So to me, that's why I love this film, because it's part of that, you know.
Yep. A glorious time. Roland, I cut you off earlier.
No, it's okay. No, what I was going to say was, and this is actually why I like doing the show with all of you guys. I come in with one mindset and I leave probably with another mindset. So and as we were beginning the conversation, you know,
that's because we put the Zarkov ray on.
That's what it is.
I've been watching your life.
And touch me. Just do this. Just do this. Just do this.
I've been watching your life roll backwards in your mind. I've been watching since you were born. I've seen everything in reverse in your life now because you put the Zarkov ray on.
When I was thinking,
I even recited the Beatles.
The Beatles. I love that line.
But
they couldn't take away my humanity.
So earlier I was thinking, you know, what is this? Because, you know, a great movie usually inspires imitators, and I was like, okay, you know, Star Wars inspired a lot of imitators.
Yeah.
You know, we can all probably, you know, rattle off, you know, some movies we saw that just let us down because they're just poor imitators.
Battle
taking
Beyond
the same
the
tones,
Stars.
taking the same beats,
Yeah. Oh my
taking
God,
everything,
yeah.
right. So, and I was thinking about this film, and I was like, you know, it never inspired imitators. And you know what? As we talked through it, and my mind worked through it, I was like, no, it did. Because I think without this movie, we wouldn't have had Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think people saw this and said, yeah, maybe they didn't do it right or perfect. They just needed a better direction, a little bit of tweaking. But like Eric, like you're saying, these movies, and you brought it up, Raiders, that literally connected so well into my head. Even I was just about to say it, but now that you said that, I was like, wow, to me, there is a continuation of this film in a way. There are imitators, maybe not direct, maybe not with the spaceship and the way the credits roll up, which everybody did, but in the way that they were honoring serials from back in the day.
Sure.
And this probably started that, you know, in that period. So I have to give, you know, a nice little, you know, handshake to that. Without this, I don't think we would have had.
Yeah, a little bit of Raiders DNA. Yeah, a little Raiders DNA.
Wouldn't have had, I honestly don't think Guardians of the Galaxy would have been made had it not been for this film.
Definitely,
or to be more, you know, Taika Waititi this is one of his favorite films. Thor Ragnarok wouldn't have happened in the way it was told without Flash Gordon. So I think, the influence is there.
Well, the influence
no doubt.
is there. There are imitators in parallel, not imitators direct.
A funny thing, if George Lucas hadn't made Star Wars after wanting to make this movie, Dino De Laurentiis probably wouldn't have been able to get backing to do it right again. Yeah. And this is probably the most similar in structure to Star Wars, right? Sure. And obviously because it's based on what inspired Star Wars, right?
Right.
But you know, this is more campy and everything. But you look at all the other imitators that you mentioned, Black Hole, and all those, they don't have the heart and they don't have the the storytelling that was in Star Wars because it was in Flash Gordon first and Buck Rogers and all those serials that came before it, right? So
yeah, and then also, I mean, we can't not wrap up this conversation without talking about a film that brought Flash Gordon back to the forefront. A film about a talking bear, Ted.
Yes, that's right.
You know, like Roland, did you ever see Ted?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness, you need to.
We shouldn't spoil it then. Maybe we should not spoil it.
Okay. It's okay.
Well, it's
one movie about phallic rocket ships. You can spoil
the thing. Well, the hook in one of the hooks in Ted is that they love Flash Gordon. They love the movie Flash Gordon. And it's towards the end of the movie, Sam J. Jones actually shows up at a party they're having, and because Mark Wahlberg's giving up that life, and Ted's calling her, "You got to get over here. It's fucking Sam J. Jones. I'm not lying to you, pal." And he comes over and they start doing blow with Sam J. Jones, or they're drinking and then all of a sudden there's a fantasy sequence where Mark Wahlberg's riding on the cycle with Sam J. Jones. He's dressed in the Flash Gordon outfit, and he's got the long blonde hair, and he's
older.
He's hugging him from behind, and they're riding on the cycle, and it's just like for Flash Gordon. Like I was like, oh my God, I can't believe for
somebody to be that specific and take something like Flash Gordon.
So it brought it to like a whole level because
they're rebooting Flash Gordon now. Yeah. You know that, right? The movie's coming out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're rebooting it. Yeah,
it's about time. I mean,
are they rebooting it?
Maybe. I think it's going to be Ashton Kutcher, which I wrote you guys. Oh my God. All I could think was Ashton Kutcher as I was watching
Really?
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, look at his delivery. It's amazing.
Oh.
I was like,
is it going to be camp though, or is it going to?
It's not Ashton Kutcher. I have no idea, but they are bringing it back. They are.
Wow.
Bringing it back.
It just seems like such an undeveloped. Like here's a property that's been around since the 1930s.
No, it's a valid property. It's a real valid property.
Nobody's really doing it, right? I mean, you would think that it's a no-brainer, you know.
Well, also an underperformer like this can also kind of kill it. People,
right?
Yeah.
That's what happened. I think the weight of the baggage of this film hurts it. Hurts people.
Well, I think it's because people are just still trying to make Star Wars. Look at Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. That tanked.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. I heard it was horrible.
Don't.
Yeah. That was his spec script for a Star Wars film.
From what I hear, it was basically Seven Samurai.
It was
Star Wars, and Star Wars had done that several times anyway.
No, it's still
retold that story. Both in animated form and on The Mandalorian. But
I think I literally just I threw the remote down and I said I can't watch this, and that was it. And that I walked out of the room angry. That's what
Roland's like. Fuck it, I'm going to watch Flash Gordon.
That's it. I watched that. That's good. That's good time. Good times. Bring in the girls and the gold stuff. That's what I want.
Well, see, that's the thing about this film that's endearing is that it's a one shot. You watch it. I don't want to see. I don't care about a reboot. I don't want that. I don't need it. Like it is the Wizard of Oz for me. It's like who wants to reboot that? And they are, by the way. Somebody's working on that as well. But I don't want that. That movie's a classic for a reason. It needs to stay there. It needs to be what it is, and let that be for generations to talk about and stuff. And if you want to say that it looks bad,
reboot.
What's that?
Who's directing the reboot?
Taika Waititi.
I'll watch it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just going to be weird for weirdness' sake. He's becoming overexposed. He's starting to hit his critical mass for me.
I like his stuff, but you still wonder if Sam Jones hadn't done what he did, if it had performed a little better in the box office, if they did do those sequels that they wanted to make. What else would have become of this? Would they have kept that fun campiness, or would they start?
They probably would have spent less money. It would have deteriorated. They would have spent less money. Yeah, it would have been diminishing returns. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I heard like most of the cast wanted to come back.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure they did, but
I'm surprised they didn't just recast it. Have somebody else play Flash Gordon or something. But
kind of what happened with
that's what killed it.
Same thing. What happened with He-Man? There was supposed to be a second one. They started building sets, costumes. And it just fell apart, So I'm glad,
It's a good thing.
Yeah, like this is a one-off. Yeah,
it stands on its own. It's fun for what it is. It's
exactly. Everything's there. Everything is what you need is there. Now there is one nitpick before we get to favorite scenes, and then we'll wrap up. There is a nitpick I have in this film, and it happens in the very beginning because the movie starts off right away, right, with the planet Earth and Ming is like, Clytus, what plaything do you have for me? And Clytus is like, obscure body in the SK system. The inhabitants refer to as planet Earth. Well, if they seem to have just kind of stumbled upon this, yet they have a button that says earthquake.
Yes.
They push a button that says they have a pre-programmed.
It should have just said quake or something.
Exactly. They have an earthquake button.
Hot hail.
But why? How do you have a button for that? It's thing you just came up, you just found, an obscure body in the SK.
I can argue that.
Go ahead, let's hear it.
Just it's Earth. How mundane of a planet to name itself after dirt.
Dirt. That's a good point.
That's true.
That's a good point.
Well, that's because that's what we call it,
right?
We can get into a whole other philosophical conversation about what things are named.
A simpleton like me.
So they've got the tornadoes, hurricanes, hot hail, this, that, and the other thing. But then there's earthquake for a planet that they just stumbled upon. They had a button pre-programmed. A very small nitpick, but and that cool thing of the scene with the plane with the pilots. and like the vision of the image of like Ming like comes through the windshield like when it's
like
when the
reaching in and grabbing
like the clouds split and he like and it's like a ghostly image of Ming kind of comes through the and then the pilots are gone. There's a lot of great stuff.
That's really good stuff actually.
There's some really cool imagery in here. I think that, it's. It wasn't a cheap film. I mean, that was a decent budget. So I don't want people to think, oh, this was a cheap film. Because usually when you use the word campy, it also is an excuse to write something off as cheap. Because if usually things that are campy are not very expensive, like they're low budget, so
the
campy,
budget,
right?
The budget was pretty comparable to some other. I mean, back when I was a kid, you hear a $30 million budget, you think, all right, that's a big budget movie. This was like 27 or something. That's not bad. It doesn't seem it like on some of the scene, but you look.
Yeah, it was still the green screen era, when the but
the
it's
matte lines and very sort of like
the Hawkmen, that when they're flying, the Hawkmen fly pretty slow. When they're landing on Ajax, they're kind of coming in like on the geriatric Hawkmen. I guess they fly slower because they like kind of land.
But when you consider though that they're it's all wire work though. They're all hanging off of wires. I mean, but it's not.
There's one shot where Voltan just peeks his head into the screen because he's not flying, just dangling. And he comes back out. He says a line and then he leaves the shot.
The flying monkeys in Wizard of Oz, that's the special effects look amazing. That's the 1930s. This kind of looks kind of cheap and
No, you're right. Absolutely right, Nick.
I don't know the wings. Because they have like bronze or metal, almost like metallic.
I don't know
wings. And,
I don't know if it's an intentional choice again because the director wants it to look a certain way, but I think that really hurt the film. I mean, I think you can be cheap and
you always have to think that way. It has to be.
Yeah, you got to think visually what's going to work. Even with a low budget,
he had the money. That's. I think
the money was there.
Flying men, not real wings.
Or it could have just been mismanagement by the producer too. Like Dino De Laurentiis has had his, really cheesy, low budget, crappy movies, and then he's had the big, spectacular. So you get the right people to really know how to spend that money the right way.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Again, I think if you're looking for that Art Deco style, it fits in with it. So if nothing looks out of place in that universe. Let me put it to you that way. Like even down to the way the guards look, the way the Hawkmen look, the way the tree men have they'll have like like woven like reeds or leaves in their thing. All the different factions have a particular style and look to them. And it fits in. And then, like I said, when you look at the Art Deco of Ajax and the ships and the way it all fits together in that universe. When we take one element out, so we take the Hawkmen out and look at them like, wow, this looks kind of corny. But you put them back in that universe, and they're fine. When they're all standing around in Ming's court, and they got the it's like they're perfectly fine. I'm okay with it. When they're flying, like Roland said, though, when they're flying, it's a little when they're landing. One guy like lands on his belly. He lands on the wing of the ship, like on his belly. They just like drop the wire. They kind of put him in low, and then they drop him on his stomach. If that was me, I would have puked right there if they dropped me on my stomach.
It seems like this guy didn't know how to direct action sequences. This was not the budget wasn't there.
Yeah.
I think that's probably his biggest flaw was that
no stunt
a lot of the stuff was storyboarded.
Yeah.
Very early on, these sequences when supposedly there was a whole other part of the film where they actually visit another moon. Dale gets kidnapped by somebody else, and they have to go rescue her from there, and they had to cut all that out because it was too much money. It was.
I think to everybody's point, the director probably just didn't know how to manage the budget, the crews, the design, and really follow through on the vision. And I mean, it's still that proves to me it's still a good movie because it still got across the line and
still entertains.
I'm going to throw one more film out there that underperformed, was a throwback to older films, and also starred Timothy Dalton. The Rocketeer.
Oh yes,
good movie.
Okay, another film that was a love letter to a bygone era. It felt like it was from that era. It underperformed also. And it was one of we should do Rocketeer also.
Great movie.
I think it's really on point.
Yeah. I heard they're making that again.
Yeah.
I hope not. Leave it alone.
There.
This will be a nice, nice to revisit the theme of this with that one. Yeah, that'll be
that's
Rocketeer is great.
Yeah, it would be a nice trilogy of Masters of the Universe, Flash Gordon, and Rocketeer as films that have performed. But Rocketeer hasn't had its renaissance. It's well respected, but it hasn't had like that.
Yeah, you can't
like
call
that
it a
resurgence the way.
Yet. You know,
yeah,
it's like,
the way Masters and Flash Gordon had that resurgence. Rocketeer hasn't had its moment yet in the sun where it's going to be rediscovered.
I hope it does.
In comic book circles, it's
well regarded. It almost did when First Avenger came out, because Joe Johnston directed that and Rocketeer. It kind of people were kind of, when I watched First Avenger, I'm like, that's the Rocketeer. I could tell that Joe Johnston directed it, because I'm like, this had the same feel to it, same aesthetic. But yeah, we'll put Rocketeer on there. So let's start to wrap up. Let's go around for some favorite scenes. No sex scenes. We talked enough about the sex, so we'll leave those scenes on the cutting room floor for this episode.
I will go the other direction. I will go the entire.
We should have put out a disclaimer before we did this one.
Tawdry, rated T for tawdry.
Thumbs up.
I for innuendo. Let's start with Nick. What do you got, Nick? What endears you? What kind of stuff endears you to this film?
I love this beginning to end, but the fight scene on the little platform that moves and the spikes come out,
and they got bullwhips.
Really clever, and the death scene. Right. But yeah, I love it. It could have been maybe directed a little better, but that engages me, I think, a little bit more than the climax does when they're all flying in. So I love that scene.
Roland.
I'll be honest with you, I'm going back to when I first saw it, and it was Klytus dying.
Yeah.
That is, I remember
the eyes and the tongue come out.
I remember the gosh of that, because that character was so three-dimensional for me.
Yeah.
And it still stuck with me. I was waiting for that scene. Like, as I'm like, I know this is a scene. I know it's here. And I was waiting for it because I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, he gets body slammed.
Yeah,
Klytus gets body slammed on that platform.
Yeah, so that's probably where, so Nick says, maybe the end is the end. It's very serial, and I get it. But that to me was a turning point of the story, and that's probably why I felt so real and got to me in the theater. That was a turning point.
At the very end. After Ming dies and the ring is on the ground and a black gloved hand picks up the ring, Peter Weingart said, "That is me. That was Klytus."
Oh, really?
That Klytus was going to return. If there was, in the sequel, Klytus was going to be like the main bad guy.
Makes a lot of sense.
I don't know how he came back from that thing. He was like deflated.
They need to figure it out.
He was like a balloon that got popped. Him and General Kala.
Well, if we were going to see the movie, all you had to do is blow him up. So that would have been.
Yeah,
you just have to have like a hand pump, a basketball pump.
That's it. You would have hand pumped him in the ritual.
Eric, favorite scene or scene that
I like.
Makes you smile.
I totally agree with all what those scenes were some of the best. Like, as far as the action, probably the best action moments in the film. But I love all the stuff on Arborea.
Yeah.
It reminds me. I mean, that set. I mean, you could swear it's Dagobah.
Yeah,
it had that value. It had that, to me, I could just
or
Yoda,
Endor.
Yoda coming out of, and just the look of the moon itself when they're flying. It's like cut in half, and it's like rotating, like it's like tumbling in midair, like almost. It's like that's an amazing piece of imagination right there, I think.
Yeah,
but I think
the worlds weren't like what you're saying is the worlds weren't like planets. They were like pieces, yeah, like they were like pieces,
of
which
a planet that might have been Ming might have split it in half or whatever and broke it up into these pieces, which is just supposed to be moons, but they're pieces of I think an actual world, which is cool. It's the concept of that. Yeah. But I think that today, watching it today, I actually kind of, it was a really nice moment at the end when all the Hawkmen, thanks Flash, that kind of got to me. It's just like, that's a little, got a little misty eyed there because it's just a great hero story. Yeah. And even the moment where he's like, hail, Flash Gordon, you saved your Earth. And he's like, I remember watching the doc about Sam J. Jones and how like he does a lot of good in the community he's like a hero in real life and people love him and all this stuff. So they talked about that scene. He goes, he didn't know what to do in that moment. So like, I think Mike Hodges told him, it's like, look, you do anything you want right there, react to that. And all he did was just jump up and and that was perfect. Yeah. That's all he needed to do, like that there was no, I don't think, what else could he do there? But
yeah, because he's just a guy, right? He's just a man, it's that's a great one. Yeah. My favorite scene is going to be the assault on Ajax, but when Biro, he's got the bomb that looks like a bell from like a boxing ring. Like the bomb looks like a he puts the bomb on, he gets hit, he goes and he's like, Biro's hit. And Flash goes over to Biro, are you okay? And what does Biro say? He just winged me.
Oh, God.
He says he winged me. Come on, you gotta love it. The Hawkman says he winged me. He got hit. He goes, he winged me. I mean, come on. How could you not love this film?
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Hawkman says he winged me. And again, it was said so matter of factly and so low that you almost don't catch it, because this battle is going on behind them. They gotta blow up the bomb, and he's like, are you okay? And
what's the thing about these British actors? They know how to do it so deadpan and so
dry,
and it's so funny. The humor is just hilarious. Yeah.
But, this is, as we wrap up, it's available for streaming. It's available on physical media. Tons of special editions. Like I said, Eric alluded to, there's a documentary just about this also, which is really nice. You can kind of see some of the turmoil that went on behind the scenes, but you don't need to. It's a fun film for adults. I wouldn't recommend it for little kids. It's just, teens are probably the right age, but you might be shifting uncomfortably during some scenes.
A little.
Yeah, some stuff I wouldn't.
Yeah,
for little kids, but
no, not the ballworms. but yeah, absolutely. This is another one of those. I don't want to use the word cult classic because, like I said, when we saw it, it was a film. Yeah, it wasn't. We were in. The three of us. I don't know where Nick was at that point, but
I was young. 10. I was 10 years old, so I didn't see it in the theater.
He was playing dice in the alley behind the theater.
Playing dice in the alley. That's it.
But the people that were there that saw it at the time, it was for us. It was a movie experience. It wasn't, I'm older now and I never heard of this film. Oh, it's a cult film. So for us, it was just a film, and that's why I'll always think of it that way. Yeah.
I remember they hyped it up very much. So this wasn't like one of those movies that kind of was like under the radar and you only hear about it afterwards after you miss it. Like you said, they hyped it up and it underperformed, unfortunately.
I will say,
after about 4 weeks, they were already pulling it out of theaters after about 4 weeks. Like it was, it slid pretty quick. I mean, it made decent money, but they were already just removing. They were kind of like
on HBO. I watched it all the time.
Oh yeah.
As soon as it came on, I was like, "Let's watch it again."
Cable, video stores, VHS. Yeah, it got its it got its resurgence. That's when it became more popular.
Yeah,
and I think it's one of the great, comic book movies. I would definitely put it in that category.
It's fun,
probably more so than the sci-fi film, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I put it right up there with in the likes of Donner Superman. Because there weren't many. There weren't that many.
Yeah.
What came next? We had Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. That was probably
89. Yeah.
Yeah. The next big comic book moment. I see this film as kind of that. It's because it's just the structure, the way it's done.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You had like Popeye, which bombed that one too. Like there weren't a lot of like comic based movies at the time. After Superman. Yeah.
Well, you realize
the Punisher with Dolph Lundgren.
Well, you also realize
it was really good. That was actually a good movie.
But that also, I guess they were afraid. Remember, they were like, they had a scene where he would do the skull, and they cut that out of the movie. They didn't really connect to the material. Where this one really connects, I think, to those original comic strips,
to the comics,
and to the serial movies, that came after it. So,
and it's not superhero. It's fantasy,
and it's pretty faithful. I know there was criticism. Yeah. Some people looked at the script and they're like, "Oh, it's not like." Because I think they were looking at it like a more serious kind of way, not the camp.
Yeah.
But this is like the characters are all from the original comic strip and from the movie serials, and even Roland talked about the costume design, And, you got the t-shirt, like you said, but also when he changes and puts on that little jacket, that's straight out of like the serials, but with color, and straight out of the comic with the colors and everything. So
I think a lot of the budget went to these, because this guy was like big in Italy. I mean, he was a really famous costume designer, and I think a lot of money kind of went there as well.
Probably designers, using high-end
design, the sets, that kind of stuff.
The little things that we're thinking are cheap or not.
Right.
Yeah.
We needed the best.
But I need the Hawkman to fly. No more money.
That's it.
It's all in the jacket. It's all in the jacket.
Someone go get all that
beautiful jacket, my friend.
Someone go get all the hangers get all the wire hangers off the racks. We need them. We gotta fly the Hawkmen.
That's it.
All right. On that note, that's going to do it for this episode. So go ahead and check out Flesh Gordon. Roland Arucci, thank you so much. Ready Speaker Podcast on YouTube. Go check him out. Subscribe, like him. Thank you so much, sir. We're going to see you real soon, and you look marvelous in that cap. I have to say that my eyes have been captivated by it. Captivated by it. That's how you should have had it. Now you do that.
That's like that.
You should have had it the whole. You should have had it the whole episode. Like
33-24.
Well, when we first came on, he had it down like that. He was prepared. He was
as he got more intense, as the conversation got more intense, he kind of was raising the hat because the stakes were being raised.
Yes.
I like that.
Nick Leshy, City of Kick blog. Thank you so much, sir. Go ahead and check out Nick. There'll be a link in the show notes for him as well, so you can see what he's up to. And as for Eric and myself, we'll be on our comfy couch in our comfy seat waiting till we see you again on another episode of the great, grand, and wonderful 3324 podcast. So without further ado, we're going to bid you farewell. For Nick, for Roland, and for Eric, this has been Dean asking you to please be kind. Why don't you go ahead and rewind?